Hello, welcome to this video of the anatomy of the pelvis. We are doing this anatomy video because it's really helpful to have a structural and visual understanding of our bodies when we're trying to contact them with our presence. We get some education in school, but this is very minimal, particularly with the female body, even today. And actually being educated about our bodies, what different parts they have, where they are in relationship to one another, is really helpful for us actually being able to connect to those spaces. So that's why I felt it was important to have this anatomy video. In saying that, we're not going to go super in depth. I've focused more so on having a variety of pictures so you can get a felt sense of where everything is. But there's obviously lots more information out there if you want it. And this video is also going to give you some key terminology that we're going to use throughout other exercises like the Yoga Nidra and the points of pelvic awareness. So it's helpful if everyone's on the same page with what those places actually are. A little trigger warning, so to speak, there are body photos in this slide, like blood vessels, muscles and things. So if you're someone that's squirmish or that could even be potentially triggered by that content, just know that it's there. You could even just, turn the laptop away from you or look away and listen to my voice. It will still be useful and you'll get those terminologies as well. All right, finally, I introduce you to our beautiful vulva here that is our title image. Yeah, welcome. We're going into the sacred space. So what is the pelvis? The word pelvis comes from the Latin word for basin. So when we talk about the pelvis being the pelvic bowl or a container, this isn't just energetic language. This is actually rooted in the etymology of the word. Structurally, it is the bridge between the spine and the lower limbs. And in being so, it can be a place of our center of gravity. It's also the container for and protector of our pelvic organs. So it protects the pelvic organs, it contains them. And the bony landmarks, so this is the actual bones of the pelvis, they serve as attachment points for muscles, as well as pathways for nerves, blood vessels, lymph nodes, other structures in the body. So this is our beautiful pelvis. Hello, pelvis. I do admit, I believe this is a male pelvis, but I could not find any free to use licensed pictures of a female pelvis, or I could not do so easily. So there's not too many differences, but I did just want to be transparent about that. Women's pelvis might be a little bit more wide, for example. But structurally, all the bones are the same. We've got the sacrum here, which is at the base of the spine, that beautiful triangle or diamond-ish bone at the base of the spine. You can even use your hand now and place it at the bony part of the lower back. And at the very bottom of that, we have the fused vertebrae that could lead into a tail if we had evolved differently. That's the coccyx, but we can also call it the tailbone. And from either side of this gorgeous structure of the sacrum and the coccyx, we have what's called the ilium. And I like to think of these as the wings of the pelvis. And another use of terminology, iliac crest, that's the spine, iliac crest or the iliac spine. Then we have what we commonly call the sit bones. So down the bottom, that's what we feel when we sit on a chair or a hard floor. But more correctly, we call them the ischium. And these two sides join to create the pubic symphysis. So the pubic bone is something we say a lot in yoga or Pilates because it's a location that we feel as one bone. But as you can see, we have cartilage there connecting both. So it's actually the two wings of the ilium coming to connect at the center. And you can even feel that connection now if you place your hand and palpate the pubic bone or the pubic symphysis at the front of the body. Now, another piece of terminology, we probably won't use it, but helpful for you to know. We've got the pubic bone and the ilium creating an inlet or a bowl, however you want to think of it. but this is the pelvic inlet, the circle-like shape that is being created as those two ilium come to connect. And that's useful to know because everything below the pelvic inlet is reproductive organs, and everything above, known as the greater pelvis, is more like our digestive system. So you've got parts of the large intestine and the sigmoid colon resting in the pelvis as well. So that's good to know. And now I just have some pictures of the pelvis at different angles. That's where our femur, our thigh bone, fits in. And you can see how the wings look at different angles. This is the sacrum, so the pelvis from behind, and all these little holes there in that bone. There's a big nerve plexus at the sacrum, so lots of nerves that feed nerve endings into the pelvis, into the legs, as well as blood vessels. So really powerful place, that sacrum. In massage, often a beautiful move is to place the hand on the sacrum or do beautiful circles on the sacrum, and that can be part of switching the nervous system into rest and digest because there's so many nerves there that can respond to that loving touch. We've also got a lot of fascia, connective tissue around the sacrum connecting to the back, so lots of yummy work we can do there too. These are the blood supply nerve endings I was hinting at, just to give you an idea of how busy it can be in the pelvis. Look at all these nerves. Look at all this blood flow. And when we have tight hips, so to speak, so pelvic floor, leg muscles, the psoas, which connects from the lumbar spine down onto the thigh here. If we have tight muscles there, it can actually impact the quality of the circulation that we get. So when we do pelvic massage or somatic exercises for the pelvis, it's actually restoring blood flow more often than not, and that's important. Here we have a beautiful image of the uterus and the bladder actually in the container of the pelvic bowl. This is an illustration, so it is not anatomically to size. My presumption would be that the uterus is smaller, but it lies somewhat deep center of the pelvic bowl. And then from the center, the two ovaries extend out to either side. And the uterus or the womb, whichever you prefer to call it, sit posterior, so behind the bladder. If you tune into your body now, you can almost imagine yourself in layers, and in the front layer is the bladder, behind the bladder is the uterus, and then behind the uterus is the rectum as well. That's not pictured here. But if we focus on the bladder for a moment, we have those two yellow strings coming down from the kidneys, and then the yellow string in the diaphragm becomes the urethra where the urine exits. And then if we look at our diagram on the left, we can see our ovaries, those two white kind of egg shapes connected to the fallopian tubes that lead into the center of the uterus. And as we move downwards, we move into the cervix, so that's where the actual vaginal cavity would be. So everything beyond the light pink part of the uterus diagram is the vaginal cave or the canal, whereas everything above is not accessible from within the vagina unless you're sperm, and then you can travel up there. Let's do an exercise now to sense into where the ovaries are located in the body. So if you take your hands and place the fingers at your pubic symphysis, so that bony part at the front of the body, and then lay the hands at the pelvic crease, so where the thighs meet with the pelvis, the base of your palms will roughly come into contact with the hip bones, the bony part of the pelvis at the front of the body. And if you sense down into the hands, a few inches beneath the hands into the body, that's roughly where your ovaries are. So you might send a few breaths of presence there. And I don't know if this is an anatomical pattern for most bodies, but My hands fit perfectly in this line between the pelvic crest and the pubic symphysis, which I find really beautiful. Here we have a diagram of the pelvic floor. We're not going to go into too much detail about the individual pelvic floor muscles, but what I feel is important to know is that the pelvic floor is like a hammock at the base of the body that holds the reproductive organs and the organs of excretion in place. So they're really important for us actually being able to function in that part of the body appropriately. And we can think of the pelvic floor area or the musculature as being made of two triangles. So you can already probably see a pretty obvious triangle here, the top of it meeting with the clitoris, and then to the sides you have these beautiful muscles extending from the center. So that's what we call the urogenital triangle, and those are the pelvic floor muscles or the musculature related to more so the vagina. They're all connected. It's a very small space, so they're all kind of interacting with and impacting one another, but that's more the vaginal pelvic floor. And then we have a triangle down the bottom, and we can think of the point of this triangle as intersecting with the anus, and the surface of the triangle being where those central muscles are. So we've got a top-facing triangle and a bottom-facing triangle. Top-facing triangle is the urogenital, bottom-facing triangle is the anal triangle. And intersecting at these two triangles is the perineum. So a bunch of connective tissue and ligaments leading into all the pelvic bowl. And this is a really helpful place to know about. It's often torn in childbirth, so there can be work that can support the consequences of that. But it's also a grounding point. So if you even just bring gentle touch to the perineum, or a bit of pressure because it's quite a strong space, it's very grounding. And massaging that space can also be helpful for relaxing the rest of the pelvic floor, because it's kind of like this central space that spreads out into the rest of the pelvic bowl. And this picture we can think of it as viewing from beneath, so kind of a funny image, but we're beneath somebody and looking at their musculature as if they're over us on a chair. So you can see that it's very much like a mezzanine or a hammock. That is the most commonly used metaphor for the musculature of the pelvic floor. Anything else I want to say there? Just being able to see it in context of the clitoris being at the top, we have the urethra and the vagina, and then behind the perineum we have the anus. So you might drop into your own body and think of those two triangles, the long edges of those triangles meeting at the perineal point. And that is our pelvic floor for now. We'll have more of it later. Here we have our clitoris, and the main thing I want to bring our attention to is actually how far it spreads. So mainstream kind of knowledge about the clitoris, if we haven't done much anatomy education or maybe even sexual education, we know about the hood and we know about the external part of the clitoris. But we don't always know about the internal aspect of the clitoris. So that's those beautiful wings that you see coming out either side, and the two bulbs. So the bulbs of the clitoris become enlarged when we experience sexual arousal, for example. And there's important nerves and blood supplies very close to this region as well. But you might zoom up on this picture and see exactly what everything's called and get really detailed about it. But for our purposes in the course, it's helpful to know what the clitoris actually looks like and how far it spreads, because we'll be working with the terminology in a later exercise of like the external clitoris and the internal clitoris. So for the purposes of this video, the external part of the clitoris is the part you see at the top, the hood and the main piece there. And then the internal part I'll be referring to includes the bulbs and those beautiful wings. Now we are revisited by the beautiful flower-like vulva. So up the top of the diagram where the flowers are, that's alluding to the location of the mons pubis, which is the fleshy part of the vagina above the vaginal opening. So that's where the hair, the pubic hair, would be. And then we have the clitoris beneath and the labia majora, so they're the larger lips, the larger labia, and the labia minor or minora, which are the smaller lips, kind of inside the beautiful envelope or petals of the labia major. And then within those labia we have the urethra opening and the vaginal opening. I think that's all I want to say on the vulva, other than that it is so beautiful, so glorious, and this is the guardian, the gates to the precious temple within. A very powerful practice to have a look at your own, if you can, through a mirror, and make a practice of really loving this incredible space. What a beautiful door. Now we have an opportunity to put this anatomical knowledge and these visuals that we've had of anatomy into an embodied experience. And we're going to do that through felt sense and visualization. And I'm going straight to the source with this one. I'll be reading an exercise from Wild Feminine, which is by Tami Lynn Kent, and she's the creator of Holistic Pelvic Care. So yeah, she has so many beautiful exercises in her book. I highly recommend it, even as a complement to this course, or rather my course would be a complement to her work. But I'm going to read you a visualization of the anatomy of the pelvic bowl. So you can do this lying down or seated. Enjoy. So, the pelvic bowl is your root place in the female body. Bring your attention here when you want to know more about your creative potential or feel the grounding energy of your core. First, locate the landmarks of your pelvis on your body. Place your hands on the upper boundary of your pelvic bowl, the pelvic crest, sometimes referred to incorrectly as your hips. Move your hand towards the front of your bowl to find your pubic bone, the pubic symphysis. This is the bony region in front of your urethra or bladder opening. This is where the two halves of your pelvis meet. Ponder this connection place. Now, move back over the tops of your pelvic bowl and feel how the bones dip down and back towards the back. Here the pelvic bones connect with the sacrum, a beautiful triangle-shaped bone that is about the size of your hand and whose tip ends at the coccyx, the tailbone between your buttocks. Place one of your palms over the sacrum and feel the vibrant energy here. There are many nerve endings and blood vessels that weave through the sacrum and nourish the pelvic bowl. These landmarks define the shape of your pelvic bowl. Think about the inner curve of your pelvis and how it forms a protective bowl around your creative center. Close your eyes and imagine your pelvic bowl. Sense the spaciousness within your bowl and notice your inner awareness of this space. You may feel a boundary marked by the bones of your pelvis, but the energy of the bowl is broader than this boundary. Trace the bony boundaries of your pelvis again and sense both the physical and energetic shape of your pelvic bowl. Bring awareness now to the deep center of your pelvic bowl, to your uterus. Notice this creative well in your core, a denser energy in the center. What is your connection to this profoundly feminine place in your own internal creative flow? Sense, on either side of your uterus, the radiance of your ovaries. You might feel a light or a warmth, shining on each side of your pelvic bowl. Have you ever noticed this source of inner fire, your own creative sparks? Focus now on the base of the pelvis, the pelvic ring. The central structure here, located just below your uterus, is your vagina, a passageway. The love-making that you take into yourself, the blood of your fertility cycle, and any babies you birth vaginally pass through this gateway. Even with cesarean births, energy still releases from the vagina too, and can be consciously accessed by breathing and visualizing the birth energy moving through your root. How does your inner vision imagine your vagina? What are you presently releasing or bringing in for your creative core? Picture the base and front of your bowl. On either side of your vaginal opening lie the lips or labia. Toward the front of your body, as a palpable place of pleasure, is your clitoris. Between your clitoris and vaginal opening is your urethra, and just above the urethra is your bladder. What do you notice in the front of your bowl? Picture now the back of your bowl. Toward the back of your root, below your vaginal opening, lies your rectal opening. Between these two openings is your perineum, a dynamic place where many muscle fibers come together. Touching this area provides an immediate sense of grounding as a place of connection to the earth's energy, and it is involved in the profound expansion that occurs with childbirth. This is also the area that often sustains tears during childbirth, and any scars will benefit from perineal and vaginal massage. Is this dynamic point holding tension or grounding your root? Locate your pubic bone and your coccyx again to mark the front and back of your pelvic ring. Envision a group of muscles covering this entire ring at the base of the pelvis. These vibrant muscles are your pelvic floor, and they provide support to your female organs, maintain your core balance and stability, and play a key role in your sexual pleasure. Your urethral, vaginal, and rectal openings all pass through your pelvic floor. Make a connection with this base of your pelvis. Now, find the top of your pubic bone in the front of your pelvis again. Imagine a place just behind it that can be felt through your vagina. This is the famed G-spot, a physical and energy center that can be touched to enhance the sensations of lovemaking. What do you notice when you focus your attention here? Close your visualization and reflect on your observation. Give thanks for this, your precious pelvic bowl. Welcome back, and thank you for watching this video. May it support your awakening of pelvic awareness, both physically and energetically. I'll see you in the next video.